Hey, Elliot.
Hey, Brian.
What's the talk of the tables?
This week, we're sitting down with Quinns, known for such shows as Shut Up and Sit Down, People Make Games, and most recently, Quinns Quest, a TTRPG review show that is truly the talk of the TTRPG industry. Quinns, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello, Elliot. Hello, Brian. I'm happy. I'm hydrated. I'm not moisturized today, but that's not a problem for you two. How are you two doing?
Doing good. We'll see if we can sneak moisturization into the conversation. I'm not sure that that's on the table.
Ooh.
So with this conversation, we always like to come into these interviews with kind of a goal. And talking to you, our goal is kind of threefold. It is the how, the why, and the why now of how do you approach criticism in tabletop role-playing games? Why is it so important? And also, why now? Both for you and for people in general, it seems like this conversation is getting more attention in the past 6 to 12 months. So to start off, oddly enough, in the opposite order, why now? Why was this the year where it made sense to start Quinns Quest?
I am so relieved that you narrowed that question down a little bit. I thought you were just going to be like, go, and I have to talk for 45 minutes doing the whole thing. Why now? Okay, so one answer is that I have a really weird rhythm in my career where I spent 10 years writing about video games for a living, and then I spent about 10 years covering board games. And so after 10 years doing that, I had to obviously, for the sake of a sort of rule of three, had to stop and go and do something else. And now it's TTRPGs. But no, the more sincere answer is that TTRPGs are just good as hell right now. And my kind of sixth sense as someone who, sort of like tries to connect to the zeitgeist of games for a living is that TTRPGs in the year 2024 feel similar to me as board games did in 2011, which is that the games are just it's now officially a travesty how good these games are and how few people are playing them. And I think particularly recently, we've seen the writing in RPGs has been good for a few years, but now we're just seeing these leaps forward with layout and art that mean the products. Like, you hold something like Eat the Reich in your hands, and it's just awe-inspiring. Like, every single page, it's so thought-provoking and exciting. And of course, role-playing games are more popular than ever, maybe, but they're also, most people are playing D&D. And that just drives me nuts, because D&D is good. It's fine. We all enjoy it. Dungeons, Dragons, they're all good. But I've been describing to people that I have never in my life, as a sort of media and culture critic, seen a space where more of the oxygen is slurped up by a single brand, as is the case with Dungeons and Dragons in the TTRPG space.
In that thing of 2023, 2024, TTRPGs feel like 2011 board games. Were there any games that really stuck out for you as moments where you kind of connected the dots or had that aha moment of oh, wait a minute, this is the jump forward. This looks like games in 2011.
Oh, you mean what TTRPGs really stood out to me?
Yeah. Or just kind of gave you that first impulse of wait a minute, something's happening here.
I think for me, a game that really stood out was, I honestly, it's sort of, how long is a piece of string? Because it's not like, there was no sudden, leap forward. So I can only talk personally here, because RPGs have been steadily improving pretty much since their inception, but especially since crowdfunding, really. Spire by Rowan Rook and Deckard really stuck out for me because it had really striking art. This was a Kickstarter game, if people might know it. I reviewed it on Shut Up and Sit Down, but it's a game where you play a resistance of dark elves living in a city full of incredibly pompous, laughably ridiculous, but inarguably powerful light elves. And what sort of just set a fire under me is that this game did the reverse of everything you would expect. For a start, it's the page 4 of the book is you will not succeed at this. You will die. You won't even leave a beautiful corpse. And most intriguingly, especially in the conversation that this may surprise you two, I'm a leftist. I believe in the politics of compassion. But some people it was just it was a game written by leftists for leftists about how much it sucks to be a revolutionary, really. The game, something that really struck out with me is the boldness of a line early on in the Spire rulebook, which says, your own family will hate you for doing this. Your own friends will sell you out. Because that's what life is like in a police state. And that felt, so provocative. And then I started looking around being like, okay, great. Who am I going to talk to about this in the media community? Oh, no one. No one is out here talking about these games. So I felt I would, be the change I want to see in the world and start screaming about these games on the internet until people told me to shut up.
There is a line that you said in your recent interview with Rascal with Lynn Kodega of your desire to raise the level of literacy of the average TTRPGer. And that line really stuck out for me of oh, that's the succinct, that's the point of the sword of the conversation I've been trying to wrap my head around.
Yeah, the term, one of my favorite sort of little factoids related to what I do is I'm part of the media, right? You and I are part of the media. But I feel like I said this in another interview, so if people are following me around podcasts, then I cannot apologize. This is so cringe. But the root of the word media is the same root as the word medium, as in someone who speaks to ghosts. Because a medium is the halfway point between our world and the afterlife, right? And the media, what you are, is the middle between the art and the consumer. So what you should be doing is trying to make that really profitable and beneficial and trying to build connections between these things. And for me, part of what that means is not just helping people to find games they love, but to appreciate those games more. And I think despite the fact that I've published a lot of negative reviews in my time, this is why I still have pretty good relationships with designers, because I think designers see what I'm doing and realize that, even if this guy says some mean stuff about my game, he's still looking at it, well, on a good day, more intelligently, or at least with more circumspection than a lot of other journalists out there. I mean, this is the other thing that I didn't mention when you said, why now? And also, why does the TTRPG space feel like board games in 2011? Because it's not just that the games are good as hell, it's that they're good as hell and there is not a sustainable media ecosystem that supports reviewers like me talking about them. So what I'm trying to do really is, I think the games deserve better criticism. Not to say there aren't great reviewers out there, but there's not many people who can do it for a living, and only when people start doing it for a living do we get an increase in training and standards.
I think it's interesting that you highlighted, being a leftist and Rowan Rook and Deckard making what I think Grant calls dangerously leftist games when he thinks about what he puts into his games. And I'm curious if there is a part of this why now question for you that is also contextual to the broader feelings of leftists and people with politics of compassion trying to survive in the world right now?
I do have an answer for that, but it's probably not the answer you want, because actually one of the things that I find happens at my TTRPGs table is, as much as, Grant can talk about Rowan Rook and Decker's dangerously leftist games, or as much as we have tons of trans and queer creators in the space, and players as well. I'm delighted by how many of my people I see in the space. One of the things that I find really nice about RPGs is that within games in general, let's see if I can get cancelled fucking 15 minutes into this podcast with you two. Within the field of games in general, we get a lot of games made by leftists with leftist messages, right? But sometimes that can feel to me a little bit like pablum. That when leftists are making games for leftists, the message is leftism is good. It's what are we actually learning from here? One of the things that I talked about with Lynn in that interview you're talking about is that TTRPGs, because they're happening privately at my table, they're able to explore themes that are a little more difficult. For example, one of the things that I've actually found really rewarding recently as a leftist with my leftist friends was playing Delta Green, a game where you play cops, and not even good cops, bad American cops who might well be corrupt and will certainly cover up a murder. Or Spire. Spire is about not just being a leftist resistance cell, but why that sucks and why you might be inclined to betray your cell, or why the whole act of resistance is sometimes pointless and maybe you should just keep your head down for the sake of your family. RPGs, because they're half made by designers who aren't necessarily going to be too risky, but they are half finished by the GMs at your table. And in being a dude who's now pushing 40 and is looking for more difficult themes and difficult art to explore, I get to take games and actually push them to a level that might be kind of dangerous or transgressive in a way that helps me to explore my politics in a way that I find more rewarding. Now I am getting crusty and old.
Well, I think that's a so the other transitioning into a little bit of the why is this important and why now, off the why now. I also want to touch a little bit on a like why you question, if you're okay with going there.
Totally, yeah.
I want to dig in on sort of like what unique perspective do you think that you have as a TTRPG critic and coming from obviously the world you've come from, but maybe just you generally.
Let me preface this answer with the big practical reason of why now is because I can, because of my privilege. I'm very aware that I'm not the only person who can write or is writing intelligent RPG reviews. However, because of, I mean, we don't need to get into the the privilege of like why I was able to become a video game journalist when I was like 16, which is its own thing that involved me having access to video games when I was younger than that. But right now, where I'm at in my career is that I have a platform and I have fans who will pay for me to talk about TTRPGs, which means I can do it sustainably, which means I can do the Quinns Quest promise, which is actually playing full campaigns of the games before I review them. That is an unbelievable like financial and like time investment that most people simply can't do. I can, therefore I want to for the sake of designers and for the sake of like people who play these things. So, yes, why me? Because, because unfortunately I'm the only one who is in that situation. I want to be really aware of that and I want to pay it forward. But also, I do think that just reviewing games for 20 years, like, talk to anyone who's been doing something for 20 years and they will have learned a thing or two, which makes them slightly better at their job. They know what mistakes to avoid. They know stuff they would teach junior people. So I do think that... I don't know. God, you've backed me into a corner where I want to say, I think my reviews are good. So let's just stop this question before
Not a
I
trick
keep...
question. Not a trick question.
I don't know. Yeah.
You heard it here first. Quinns thinks his reviews are good. We got him. We got him,
And how
everybody.
dare he?
Oh no, the cops are outside. They're going to take away my reviewer's badge and gun.
No, but I think it is important that you are creating this, with Quinns Quest, a review program that is like so thorough and so informative and helpful for someone who is like trying to get into possibly a new game and like get away from the trap of D&D is the only RPG. But also it's just because it is so entertaining and so watchable, it's pulling in those people who otherwise wouldn't watch a TTRPG review if it was just man talking to camera.
Yeah, I mean, this is also part of it, is that I was talking to a friend of mine who's a producer, and he's a phenomenal producer who's behind a whole bunch of very successful indie games, but he mostly keeps to sort of the shadows. But what we were bonding about over drinks is that actually, while he's a producer, half of his skill set is marketing and selling people on games, and actually that's the same with me. I've actually now fully spaced. Brian, can you say what your question was again?
Boy, did I have a question.
That's the question. To kind of turn this into a question, I think that like one of the things that we think about in the stuff that we make when we're making actual play that I think is related is this idea of balancing entertainment and resource.
Okay, yeah.
And how do you think about that balance in your videos?
It's tricky, right? So I'm known as a reviewer. This is sort of now able to pick up the thread that I absolutely ham-fistedly dropped a second ago. I'm known as a reviewer, but actually secretly part of what I am is marketing. And then another part of what I am is being like a comedian or writing or using funny analogies. Because kind of like... This relates to my point that what the most important thing for a TTRPG isn't rules, it's vibes. But the reason for that is if there are no vibes, no one's going to actually doggedly run your game and teach it and get your friends to come over week after week. And it's similar being a reviewer, where if you talk about the utility of my reviews, you'd think on paper the most utility they can offer is teach you if you like a game or not. But that's secondary, because if I do that and no one's watching, then no one finds out if they like the game or not. Most importantly, no one the group of people who want to play something like the Wild Sea never watch the review in the first place because they don't want to. So the most important thing I do is something I learned as a magazine journalist way back when I was 16 years old, which is... this lesson stuck with me forever. Like, when you write for magazines, which people used to read, kids, ask your parents what magazines are, you had to write it because people would pick up magazines in the store and flick to any page and read any paragraph or article. So every single first paragraph of anything in the magazine had to be shit hot. Because what you have to do, you have to write a sentence that gets people to read a paragraph. The paragraph has to get people to read a page. Reading the page gets them to buy the magazine. But that's still what I'm doing with YouTube, is like the first 5 seconds of my reviews coax you into watching the next 5 seconds and so on, until accidentally you've inhaled a review and decided maybe you do want to go and play Mothership or Heart or something.
It's worth noting that the thing that YouTube has gamified now with like retention analytics and strategies of like, the first 5 seconds, first 30 seconds, first minute have always been true. Everyone has more access to see them now because they're in YouTube Studio, which is available to anyone who has a YouTube channel. Whereas before, that was knowledge that was like hidden behind the paywall of having a job in advertising or media.
Yeah, what's funny to me is those the insane fonts you see on like American Wild West era sort of 19th century posters. Yeah. Where there are like 20 different fonts, and it's every line is a different font. That to me has always looked like a YouTube thumbnail. We're just gonna do crazy shit to make you look, and then you'll actually accidentally absorb the message.
I feel like that is the thing we've been thinking about more in producing actual plays of like, we want people to listen to this whole thing. An actual play is inherently a very heavy lift to get someone to listen to. Like, best case, it's like an hour, hour and a half. But realistically, it's probably like closer to 2 hours for one episode. That's a movie. How many movies do you see in a year, really? And so if we're not, because we have, the more we go on, the more we evolve and the more we add in music and sound effects and like really take care with the players and choosing our games and like really elevating as much as we can. Because if we want people to listen to it, and we want them to hear the whole story and see the full breadth of this game that we're really excited about. We want to create a like Dimension 20 level product for the Wild Sea, for Orbital Blues, so that more people are excited about it. But if you don't get them in the first minute, if you don't get them in the first 5 minutes, they're not going to stick around.
In terms of, that's cool. And it occurs to me now, just embarrassingly late, that really the three of us are in the same business. You're using actual play and I'm using reviews, but all we're really trying to do, I don't care if you agree or disagree with my criticism of Heart. I care if you do think this game is cool that you go and buy it, because, well, what do I care if someone agrees or doesn't agree with me that Heart is a good or a bad game in their bedroom if they're not? But like that's not really participating with the art. The review is just a way through. I have been thinking about something actually that I'd love to run by you too, as far as a service that, in terms of onboarding people into the hobby, that I think you two are in the business of, but like the community has not got a dialogue about right now. So what I'm aware of is that so many people's first way into role-playing games is actual play. Like that's when you first get their attention. That's what's there to, like, whether it's Critical Role or Dimension 20 or My First Dungeon. I mean, you folks specifically are trying to be like, hey, look how you can run a game. So people are seeing these amazing GMs and these amazing, like, sort of almost like radio plays now with like all the scoring and the sound effect. Like, it's wonderful. But then also we have this sort of like chestnut, this catchphrase that we say in the hobby of like, GMing is great fun to do badly. Just try it. Just get involved, And I think what we're doing a disservice for all the people who want to get into RPGs is, I don't think, let me know if you two agree, I don't know if we're doing enough for what most wannabe GMs are, which is they want to blow their friend's mind. And like they want to be that Matt Mercer, they want to be that, Abria Iyengar. And to which I think you need a completely different way of talking about GMing. It's no longer enough to say like, just get into it, do it badly, it's fine. I think maybe we should have an approach almost more like cooking YouTube of like, okay, yeah, you want to be good. We all want to be good. That's why we're GMs. Let's talk about why it's unbelievably fucking hard, and let's talk about all the ways in which you're gonna suck, but you will improve.
I think I like that, and I think I'm struck by something you brought up in I listened to your Yes Indeed conversation with Thomas, and how you said that the way you think about GMing is how much can I entertain my players.
Yes.
And I've realized that is also how I think about GMing, and like maybe that is a trap to fall into. But I think that there might be a large cohort of people that want that, that want to come away from the table feeling like they, gave their friends an experience. So I think that I love the cooking show comparison. I'm a huge fan of cooking YouTube, even though I'm not the world's best home chef, but like things that I have pulled from cooking YouTube have made me just a better not chef. I'm not a chef.
Whatever.
A better cook,
yeah.
In my like daily, the way I cook like dinner. Like I'm not making these exact like high-end recipes from cooking YouTube, but like I am, cooking a little more intuitively. And I think that like the thing you're identifying of, if we can make the GMing equivalent of a cooking show, people won't become Matt Mercer or Bria or Brennan. But they might pull some little nuggets, and juice up their GMing over time.
I think the thing that I think I agree with you that I think the cooking show analogy is really good. And Elliot, I've had the same experience as you of like you pick something up on YouTube, some kind of skill, and you slowly like learn it. I think what we haven't seen yet, and what the space maybe needs, is that I don't think that show exists yet. I think there's a lot of people who kind of head fake towards it, of doing like advice shows. And I think, My First Dungeon even kind of started out as that, of answering questions and like giving tips and things. The problem is that with a cooking show, I can show you, here's how to crack an egg. Here's how to do this skill, and then you can go and do it right there or follow along. The problem, the disconnect that we haven't quite bridged the gap of yet, is there isn't a show or a program or a resource. I think My First Dungeon is attempting to do it. I don't think we quite do it to this degree of, here's a thing, now go do it with your friends right away. Almost like a workbook, worksheet type thing. I don't quite know what that looks like, but there is something really cool in if and how that could exist. I think could be really valuable.
Yeah, I think, okay, cool. So I'm not crazy. But
no, definitely
in terms
not.
of like, you two are both talking about actionable next steps of like, could we have this kind of show about how to be a GM? I think, like, first off, some of those shows definitely exist. There are all kinds of great YouTube channels about how to be a good or a better GM. What I think is missing is the kind of discourse around GMing is super hard, and most GMs want to do it better. Like so I'm, I guess, just agreeing with you two. I'm just saying, rather than like, oh, if only there was a product that solved this, I'm saying like there's this absence in how we talk about GMing as a community, where we have these, for the first time, like supernova celebrities who are extraordinarily good at GMing, and then and that's what most people see that gets them excited. They want to play games, like they want their campaigns to maybe look a little bit more like Critical Role. But we're not acknowledging that. We're sort of just saying like, but we're not. That's not how most people GM. It's like, why not? Why, like, most people want to GM like that. Why don't we think as a community, how do we all get there?
I see what you're saying.
I'm kind of two minds here, because I think that like what that trapping the down that road lies
a lot of cursed stuff.
A lot of cursed stuff where you like, we're trying to, one of our goals is to bring more people into the hobby. And if we make this, the thing that I always hated about when I got into D&D was this perspective of like, oh, the forever DM is the most tortured soul in the world, and it's just like, and like your players should be so grateful for all the hours you put in. I hated that shit, because I'm like, it should be a joy. Like it's hard work, but it should be a joy. And like making that perspective makes it so that so many people, and this is a D&D perspective, and I want to just like caveat this, so many people online see that shit and they're like, oh, I could never DM for my friends. I'm just gonna wait until I can find a group, and then they don't pick up a book and play, and that's kind of the sad turn down that road I worry about.
But maybe there's kind of like a two-step thing. Maybe we're seeing it as like this or that, and maybe it's this then that. Because I think what exists a lot of right now is, and I think this is a mindset that we are championing with My First Dungeon a lot, is, hey, this is actually pretty. This can be very easy. Yeah, I'm already caveating myself. This is not as intimidating as it looks. You just have to do it. The first time's it's gonna suck. It's gonna be scary. You're gonna feel really bad, in the same way that you feel bad trying any new skill. Like, people often are like, oh, I can't draw. But you ask them, hey, how many hours have you practiced drawing this week? And they'll say 0. It's like, well, of course you can't draw. You haven't practiced it.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, there is that second step of, yes, it can be easy to get into this. But if you want to look at this next level, the thing that you really want, the skill of, the Ibrea, the Brennan, the Matt, hey, there's a whole other world to explore. Let's explore that together there. I think maybe that's the thing that is less existent right now.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, we want to talk about criticism, but that's been in my head, and I wanted to toss it out there. And I don't know. And I think it also I don't think it's helped. You know what? If I keep talking about this, I am going to push our conversation back into it.
No, you're good.
No, your tangents are welcome on this show.
We're down to travel down any road you want to go.
Well, I just end up also thinking about how the natural thing for the Ibrea Matt of the world, by far the most visible people in the scene, is to downplay their own talent. And I see this in interviews a lot. They all want to make GMing seem accessible. They all want to talk about how what they do isn't special. Because of course they do. That is the natural way to thank a community that's appreciates them so much and driven them to stardom and some money. But I think someone in the community needs to step up and be like, yeah, but you are special though. And how do we like, most GMs maybe now coming into the hobby are being like, are probably, yes, lots of people are being put off. Lots of people also want to get there. Let's, as a community, be more like, honestly, I play a lot of Street Fighter. And the fighting game community is what I end up thinking about a lot, because that's a community that everyone, no matter how good they are, will say, I suck. I know I suck, but that's the thing. But then what that fosters is in the community is a community that also, whenever you post like, hey, I did this cool thing tonight, the community goes, oh, that's so awesome. I suck and could never do that. You don't suck. You're great. And like, it's a community that knows to exist. It's all made up of people slapping each other on the back because everyone's trying to get better all the time. It's just some of that attitude I don't see in TTRPGs because it all gets taken up by the discussion of like, just try it, it's still just easy. It's fun to do badly. And like, I say that as well. It's just, I don't know if that's the whole conversation.
I think you're right. And I think if there's a community I can point to that I think maybe is doing this better than us, it's the D&D DM community on TikTok.
Yes.
I feel like as much as I'm like out on D&D these days, I mean, I still play in a few like home games sometimes, but like that community really has like fostered a vibe where people will get on and talk about the cool thing they did or the like unique twist that they used and like how to implement that in your games and how to level up and stuff. Like a bunch of like mid-sized D&D TikTok celebrities. I feel like they're kind of getting towards that formula that you're talking about.
I totally agree. Yeah, and I think level up. I would, that's, Elliot, thank you so much. Like, I think we've got to, we talked about this for 20 minutes. It's a thought that's been rattling around my head. I think that's the takeaway is I think the rest of the TTRPG community, we can continue to be derisive of D&D in one way or another. But I think one way that community is kicking our ass is all the GMs and all the content about like, hey, I did this cool thing for my friends, and everyone being like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to do that cool thing as well. In the service of a game we might not love, but like, where's our steps to do that for the games we do love,
I want to shout out somebody who maybe is on your radar, who I think is doing this a little bit for indie games, is Sean Foer on TikTok.
Oh yeah?
His username is Scene4. And he, in my mind, makes this kind of content for indie games where he's like, here's like how like GMing Blades in the Dark looks this way. I don't know. I think he gets the closest to this sort of content for indie games on TikTok at Scene4 on TikTok. Highly recommend checking him out.
I recognize this user icon. That's great.
I'd never really considered that. I do see a lot of those like TikToks or YouTube shorts of like, yeah, here's my player cast Fireball and this is how it happened. Or this is like what happened when I did. I've never seen that for Heart, for Spire, for Wildsea, for Die. And there's no reason why I shouldn't. I just never have.
You know what I did at the start of my Mothership campaign, or one of my Mothership campaigns that I loved, but there wasn't like an ordinary. There's no space for me to be like, "Hey, internet, look what I did," because indie games don't have it so much. When I started Mothership, there's an amazing third-party product called Breach of Contract, which is written by an actual lawyer, and it's a bunch of in-universe contracts for like the end user license agreement for an Android, or you're going into corporate property. Here's what you have to sign to say that if you break anything, you have to pay us for it.
That's so cool.
And then It has a bunch of other stuff in there as well that lets you bring legalese into your Mothership game, which is perfect for a game of capitalist horror. But what I did is I did the scene when our campaign began with the scene from the first Alien where they all wake up out of cryo sleep on a ship and they have to do a thing. But I had them wake up, and to make it that slightly more Mothership than it is Ridley Scott, their boss showed up with paperwork. And so while they were all groggy and in their pants, I handed them all I handed them all a contract. They all had to read it, fill it out, sign it. And then I took it and gave them another contract as they're still cold, hungry, shivering, sign this. All real pieces of paper. And like, it was so good. It was so funny. They were like role playing. They were arguing about caveat. Like it was the perfect physical prop to get them into the campaign. And I just had to tell that story on your podcast because there wasn't anywhere else on the internet for me to talk about it.
Well, and I think that's sorry.
I was just going to make a bit. You go ahead.
Oh, I think that's the exact.
I want to hear Brian's bit.
And it's a great double win for you because your players had a great time and you got them to sign up for Power of Attorney to you.
Correct. Yeah. Right. Yes.
Okay, it was worth it. It was worth going back to the book. And I think that's the exact kind of thing that like Quinns, you could get on TikTok and say, here's how I kicked off my Mothership campaign great. And like, that's the kind of, I think, like content path maybe the space needs.
Midnight Muscadines is a cozy, dark tabletop role-playing game where light and shadow intertwine in a fractured world. Players take on the roles of marmoteers, brave adventurers who journey into the untamed wilderness to collect the elusive Midnight Muscadines, craft magical jams, and protect the fragile light of Nim. Through collaborative storytelling and resourceful gameplay, players weave tales of courage, community, and the pursuit of balance. Will you preserve the light, uncover the truths hidden in the shadows, or reshape the balance of the world forever? Midnight Muscadines is perfect for fans of Studio Ghibli and Sea of Stars who seek to capture the magic of exploration and the heartfelt adventure in a world where small heroes make a big impact. Play Midnight Muscadines as a traditional GM'd game, GMless, or even solo. Midnight Muscadines is crowdfunding now on BackerKit. Join the campaign at pandeongames.com/muscadines.
I'm Quinns of tabletop role-playing game review show Quinns Quest, and this is Play to Find Out. Play to Find Out is an actual play podcast that brings notorious old games from the 80s and 90s back to the table. Each season of Play to Find Out, I'm joined by Emily Johnson and Rob Morgan.
Good? Nervous?
Yeah.
You both looked at each other really concerned, like you think what's about to happen is going to be unpleasant. And frankly, I think that's rude.
And together, we explore the TTRPGs of ages gone by. Our goal, to separate the TTRPGs that deserve to be remembered from those that maybe don't. I don't know, Emily. It was the 80s.
Also,
a lot of people were on cocaine. We blow the dust from decrepit systems to learn how they work. Your 100 on the encounter table bursts out. Right, you've encountered a bug. Get ready. Don't laugh.
Does one get ready for a fog?
Don't laugh. Encounter their unique quirks.
I do finger guns to cover up how I wince.
A weird thing happens as you do finger guns.
Oh no.
And I'm hoping that the Quinns Quest community will join us in exploring these games too. If you this up, cannot describe to you how much your adventure ends here.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because the best way to learn is to play to find out. Play to Find Out is available now on the Quinns Quest Patreon, but the first episode of each series streams for free on the Quinns Quest YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Anyway, you failed the EarthTech roll, and you made jokes while I was doing my exposition, so you don't get to hear any more.
Oh, no. Come on.
I was shook as...
I am going to find a way to connect this back to critique.
I'm not taking that challenge. That's all on you.
Here we go, Elliot.
How are you going to do it? You got one succinct line? You got it?
He brought up in here that Mothership, you used this third-party piece of material, breach of contract. And I think that one of the things I really want to ask you about in terms of how you're approaching critique is that, one, you play the game. But two, I kind of want to know how much of the context around the game are you considering, whether that's third-party materials, whether that's a designer's stated intention outside of the text or your conversation with a diner. How are you considering the context beyond the text in review?
Wow. Yeah, great question. I think this relies on my the power of my undiagnosed ADD and hyperfixation. Because the reason that I launched Quinns Quest is because I was just getting so excited about these games. And the games I choose to review, generally, the hurdle that they all jump over is I'm reading them and I'm going, gosh darn it, this is so exciting. And then once I'm like, if I care about a game enough to run it, I will start reading all kinds of other stuff. You know, like before I ran Delta Green, I was hungrily devouring adventures before I settled on Impossible Landscapes to try and run. You know, same with Mothership. Just once I got excited about Mothership, I began browsing all the third-party stuff that's out there. In terms of it is something that I think I could do a better job of, but there's only so many hours in the day, is like reading the comparable games to a particular game, which can become really tricky if, like, I don't know, if I'm interested in Stone Top and then it's like, do I also read Dungeon World? What other weird Dungeon World inspired games do I read? And sometimes it's like, no, this game has the nice art and the nice layout. I want to read this one, you know, I got excited to buy and read Mouse Ritter because I saw that, it's in the other room, that Mouse Ritter has an adventure box set, which is, 24 adventures that all take place in the same, like, abandoned house. So your adventure site is a standard house in the country. And then, like, one adventure is, like, the rotten tree outside. One adventure is the grandfather clock, which you can go up inside, and so on. And I read that and went, this is the sickest box set I have ever seen. And so then I read Mouse Ritter, and so, like, I don't know. To some extent, it's basically what you've just done there, Elliot, is maybe admit my lack of professionalism and that I'm just following my gut and heart and hoping that that's not going to upset people.
I don't think there's anyone that can watch Quinns Quest and think, oh, this guy is not professional. I mean, like,
I don't know, Brian. I did just finish filming something yesterday where I drop a box on my dick over and over again. So, like... That's like, to be clear, only one of those drops appears in the edit, but it's like, I should do this several times to make sure I get the funniest one. So, like, there are levels of professionalism. I'm that kind, but yeah.
I don't know. There's something there, though, of the non-professional would do it once. The professional does it 10 times and finds the funniest one. So, like, don't you dare take it away from yourself.
Yeah, fair. Okay, sure.
I don't think, I would say that I think that, I almost think that this is like an aspect of being in the quote unquote early days of TTRPG critique, that like in order for this as a discipline to get off the ground, you have to have people who are following their passion and follow their gut. Otherwise it won't happen.
Yeah. But it's interesting that you say early days, because actually, just this is a slight side point, but one of the things, as long as we're talking about critique, I feel so rewarded by being a journalist in this space, is that despite the fact that TTRPGs are older than video games, which I spent so much of my life doing, the scene is so not set in stone. It's like plasma, it's gooey, like someone can come up, like, I don't know, like Yoseba's Bread and Breakfast is above my head and to the right as I say this, and like, pardon my French, what the fuck? Like it just,
oh, yeah.
like stylistically, structurally, like what is going on? Like, and it feels, I don't know, feels like any particular, like Morkborg. Like Morkborg comes along and then people are like, oh, I'll riff on this. And then suddenly it's just become this like seismically large, impactful thing. What is role-playing? How do we do it? Like I remember I was in a conversation with a friend of mine, Jack DeKitt, who's on Friends at the Table. And this was years and years ago. And they were talking about playing Blades in the Dark. And I said, and I just was playing a Blades campaign at the minute, so we were being nerdy and drinking and talking about it. And I said something like, yeah, and it's so perfectly structured because you do a heist every session and then you do downtime. And they were like, excuse me, what? You do a heist every evening? We do a heist probably about every 8 sessions. And I went, hey, what? And then we found out that John Harper will run 2 heists a night.
Whoa.
And like, it's so yeah, sorry. That was a long rambling thing, but you see what I mean? Like, what is a TTRPG? I mean, like, it sort of like sounds like a joke from Quinns Quest, but what is a TTRPG? We just don't know. Like, it's a real thing, I believe. And that's just great to work in. Yeah. I know a TTRPG when I see one, for sure. Or sometimes I don't. You could look at the Apollo 47 technical handbook and not know you're looking at an RPG.
Love that. Love the Apollo 47 handbook.
Oh dear.
So I think that one of the most fun, like what the thing that you're describing is one of the most fun things for me about being a game designer, being in this industry, that like there is so much flexibility within the idea of what is an RPG, that like we get to play in all these fun ways with it. Like Eusebius is one of our favorites here. When you look at the industry kind of broadly, despite the nebulousness of it, are there commonalities in things that like you wish you could see more of or see less of when you look at the TTRPG industry?
I mean, this is a very crap and obvious answer, but I would like to see less D&D. But I have become more. I've learned a lot about RPGs since launching Quinns Quest. I think I knew a bit before. I know a bit more now. But one of the things that threw me is, talking to more like female friends and friends of friends, and realizing that when like so many of them are role players, but they all play D&D, and it was this moment of being like, oh, I want progressive diversity and less D&D, but actually one of the places like there's a lot of femininity coming into the hobby now, which is great, but via D&D. So maybe I need to be a little more wary, maybe I need to be a little more thoughtful, and in terms of like unpicking this knot.
Going back to what we were talking about before of like, not having the non-D&D clips on TikTok, I think it's just there's so many more ways into D&D. There's so many more outlets that you can get excited about that game in particular that I think Quinns Quest is like a way of the community doing that better. But I think there are a lot more people who have to kind of start taking up that mantle of, if we want to see, Orbital Blues, Blades in the Dark become that level, we got to give people more and more and more exciting inroads to like see a clip, be like, oh, I didn't know Thirsty Sword Lesbians was like that. Maybe I'll check it out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think and this does relate to what we were talking about earlier, because I do believe that one of the ways, like for all those people playing D&D thinking like, oh, I want, like actually not for nothing, not only do people want to be good GMs, but the women I know who got into D&D via Critical Role all want to be great players as well. Like I have a friend who talks endlessly about Laura Bailey, the famous Critical Role clip where she uses dust of deliciousness on a cupcake to outsmart a witch. And she's like, that's the kind of player I want to be. But one of the ways I think we could fix all the wounds in RPGs at once is I genuinely believe the more games you play, the better a GM and player you get, because you can steal so many ideas and not just mechanics, but like ways of thinking. You know what I mean? I don't know, like I always mention this because it's got so many good ideas in it, but I was just playing Stonetop recently, and I can't even remember what RPG we pulled it from. But Stonetop is a game about an Iron Age village, and we realized, I said to my players, hey, if you guys want to be NPCs that are in this scene, and they were like, what, really? It's like, yeah, no, for sure. And then that suddenly the whole village is brought to life.
There's a thought I've been having recently that I'm slowly starting to synthesize into a point, but in translating languages, there are oftentimes words that don't translate directly into English or into another language. We can use 10 words when 2 will do, but we're never getting the exact idea. You're not getting the tip of the sword. And I think the reason why people like D&D is because it's such a common language. Like everyone knows how to make jokes in D&D. If I can say I cast Fireball, everyone understands what that means. The more we play more games, it gives us access to like, now we all become polyglots. We can tell jokes in different languages and express ideas that you could express in D&D 100%. But it is more direct and easier and likely better to express them in a different game. Like I could tell a sad space cowboy story in D&D. Absolutely. I can do it better, more effectively, and probably communicate that idea better and have a better chance of really achieving it if I play Orbital Blues.
Yeah. You know, one of the times that I get, I'm very optimistic about Quinns Quest because the games kind of sell themselves, and about, getting people to try more games. And like, there's been a fun thing where, we launched with the Wild Sea. I say we, as if there's more than just me and my parents editing these things. I launched with the Wild Sea, and everyone's like, "Oh, this game looks really good," and actual plays showing up that are absolutely extraordinarily professional is also very exciting. And so, suddenly there's this groundswell of excitement towards the Wild Sea. And then when I published the second or third review, I started to get comments of people being like, "Hang on, but I just bought the Wild Sea. Why are you telling me about another RPG I could be playing?" And it's like, yeah, dude, yes, there's loads of these. That's the point I want to get Quinns Quest to the point that people are like, I can't watch Quinns Quest because there are just too many of these games. And it's like, yes, that's how I feel. That's how we should feel as a community.
I want to underline that, though, what you just said. That's the mental block for a lot of D&D people, is they have this perspective of I'm a one game house.
Yeah.
And then you show them another cool game and they're like, okay, now I'm a that game house. And then it's then you show them 5 more games and it's like, wait a second. And it's that transition to, I can be as behind me you'll see a 50 game house.
It's like there's no one who owns one deck of Magic the Gathering cards. You own 0 or you own boxes.
Yeah, and I think, but one of the things that I think people are really missing out on because I think D&D players will. This is one of the more toxic things about D&D is they'll see a second game and go, well, I can't pick up a second game because it took me so long to learn D&D. And then you go, no, it's not as complicated as D&D. But then on top of that, there's the narrative side of it where they go, but I've been playing a D&D character for a year. It'll take me a year to feel that invested in another character. And it's like, no! The point of these other games is they make you feel good about a character in one session. That's how they're designed. They also make you realize the most exciting thing you can do with a character is for their story to end. And so, talking to, again, my friends who play D&D, I have to bite my tongue because they'll be like, I'll say, how long have you been playing? And they'll say, 2 years. And I'll go, tell me about your character. What's their arc? And they'll be like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, how have they changed? It's like, what do you mean? It's like, I'm going to kill either you or myself. But in terms of that commonality of language, the thing that I find most depressing that you can see in actual play very clearly is if you look at Dimension 20, or you watch live shows of Critical Role or whatever, when someone rolls a natural 20, you know how the audience just goes haywire. They just pop off. When I have been watching Never Stop Exploding, or which is the new Dimension 20 thing that uses a hack of kids on bikes, have you two seen how hard Brennan is working to make people pop off at other good dice rolls in a system they don't understand? When a dice explodes in that, Brennan goes, it explodes! And all the players look at him. The players, not even the audience, but the players, the first audience for actual play. I just stole that term from Emily Friedman, actual play scholar. Thanks, Emily. But yeah, your players are the first audience, and even they are dumbfounded at what dice rolls they're supposed to react to. And when I see that, that's the one time that I can feel a little enervated about the task in front of me with Quinns Quest of trying to get people to play other games, because that is so big, that natural chemical response to rolling a natural 20, and it's built up over a decade, and it's like, damn, it's going to be hard to try and get anything in the community that has that same level of heft.
I think Elliot and I have been working on designing a new game, and that is one of the things that has been it keeps popping into my mind of there has to be that type of mechanic somewhere in the game of the instant you roll it and in that that explosion of joy. And I think when you get into Kids on Bikes, you start to have that of it explodes, I keep going.
Yeah.
But you've got to teach that moment of true excitement and explosion. And when a dice system doesn't have, when a rule set doesn't have that, I don't want to discount systems that don't have it, because they still have a joy to them. But there is that extra big dopamine hit that Nat 20 gives you that so many systems are trying to find, as you're saying. And I'm just I want to find more of those.
It's so I remember, this is a kind of non sequitur, but I remember a couple of Scandinavian LARP people that I saw a talk from describing D&D as a peculiarly American game. because D&D is like an encapsulation of the American dream, where it's like we'll all work hard as level 0 adventurers and everyone will get richer and more powerful, and then, you know, at some point we'll stop playing, I guess. And for that system to work, you have to... It's basically, you know, it's a parable of American exceptionalism that only works as a system if you ignore the fact that this society is propped up by people who are level 0 permanently for some reason. Anyway, but the natural 20 is such a... It's almost a bit childish, because it's like, oh, this amazing thing happens now that breaks the story. And so now we've gotten to the point that I can actually respond to what you said, which is like trying to bake something into your system that players can get that excited about. You know, the times that my players have gotten the most excited, if you actually track all of our excitement on like a graph, if we were all, you know, on heartbeat monitors, is in Forged in the Dark games, when someone botches a roll.
Yeah.
When someone gets all ones, and it's like, and that's the high point. But like, if to try and get new players to that point, like, we have to disentangle, well, okay, winning is actually not what we want to do here, because winning is not the most exciting story.
I think that's the joy. That is like the joy and magic of non-D&D TTRPGs. Not as a monolith, but so often make failure so fun and interesting. And I think this is like comes from like Powered by the Apocalypse, like largely originally leading this idea.
Yeah.
And that is a brilliant mental shift, that once you accept your comfort with like, oh, I can love failure because like I'm not my character, I'm the person having fun telling a story with friends, and like my character can go through shit and I can still have fun. That's great. I think D&D makes this like I am my character brain connection maybe more, which is why Nat 1s feel so bad and Nat 20s feel so good.
I feel like I've had some of this myself as a player and as a game master, just as we've been playing more games on My First Dungeon, of two ideas that I like were very core to me, were very D&D centric, of like, I don't understand roll tables. I want to build all my stuff myself, and I want to, like, you know, the world building. And the idea of preset characters like in Yuzeba's was very foreign to me when we started that. I was like, but I want to build my weird little guy. I don't want to just use your weird little guys.
Yeah.
It all felt like restrictive and bad. But the second I started, you know, we played a game of Honey Heist and we just like rolled for this scenario, I was like, oh, you know, you had that light bulb moment. When you play Yuzeba's for the first time and you're given, you know, Sal as a character sheet or Gertrude as a character sheet, it's like, oh, I can do this? Like, it is a, like, I don't want to say transcendent. It's a little over the top, but it is like a moment of elevation where you're like, I didn't know this was here. I didn't know this was an option, or I didn't understand it.
Yeah, and you know, like, it's one of the ways in which I've been really thinking about that recently is I did a People Make Games documentary on the only form, really, of role-playing in China, which is called Jubentia. And Jubentia is astronomically big in China, like a much, like, it's what people of a young generation do instead of karaoke or drinking. Like, it is so much more popular than role playing is over in our country, in Europe and America. But they look at Western role playing as A, hella complicated, which it is, and B, childish. Because Jubentia is all about, when you play a game, it's like, this game has these 6 characters, pick which one you want. And it's like, those 6 characters then put you in interesting places. And the point of Jubentia for many Chinese people is like, I get to experience the emotions of, like, let's say we're 6 doctors in a kind of ER situation. I get to experience what it's like being this doctor, who might also be sexist. And like, you know, like, and we're going to experience that all together. And then China looks at the role-playing we're doing, which has these massive books and where everyone gets to make their own weird little blorbo. And they're like, that's a bit kiddie, isn't it? And it's like, when you hear them say it, you're like, yeah, I guess,
like, whatever.
And yeah. Yeah, it's like this. But this is what also excites me as a journalist, is like, as much as D&D has really trapped really our imagination of what a role-playing game can be, when I look at outside of D&D at like the possibility space of the scene, it's like, it's superhuman. Like, there's no area of games that is as exciting as this to me right now.
So the other kind of, you know, perspective I always like to bring into these conversations is that I'm also a game designer, and I know that your audience is primarily going to be like players and GMs and people who are buying books to play, but also there is going to be a generation or ecosystem of designers that are watching your videos and taking away lessons. Do you think about that audience, and like, are there things you hope that game designers take away from your work?
Oh wow. I mean, yeah, everything. I hope they steal relentlessly. Like, one of the things I said on Shut Up and Sit Down is that video game designers have to play more board games, because I think I would quite literally use the phrase, you have no idea how much there is to steal. Like, something like Slay the Spire, right? Slay the Spire, which just suddenly has kicked off deck building as a genre of video games, which is now worth $1 squillion. That came from a Netrunner player who was, and I feel similarly about RPGs. Like, I'm desperate for every time I cover a game. Yeah, I'm very happy for people to go out and play it, but really also equally, I'm excited for people to go and just rip the ideas out of it. Like, just go and be inspired and steal stuff. And that's one of the great things about TTRPGs is lots of the most popular games are hacks of pre-existing other games. Everyone's building on top of each other all the time. It's marvelous. It's the best.
It's the best. It's just the best. I just love games, I love them.
I think it's important to note that the biggest leaps forward in anything do not come in small incremental changes to things that already exist. They come when two ideas that do not belong together are synthesized and something new is created. Like, for me, Starcrossed, the second someone added a Jenga tower to role-playing games, I was like, what the fuck is that? What is, like, I have to know. Not only that, it has like the best tagline of any game I've ever heard.
What's the tagline?
A role-playing game for two players who really, really want to, but really, really can't. And I was like, oh.
That's great. One of the things I've been telling younger games journalists and designers is get a piece of paper and draw circles on it representing like video games, mobile games, but like every kind of play you can. And then like try and put them roughly how close to each other they might be, but don't have the circles cross over. So I'm including like fantasy football, sports, playground games, paintball, Nerf, like mobile games, VR, whatever. Draw as many of those circles as you can and then ask them, what is between these two circles? What is between these two circles? And like some of my most favorite things in the last like few years, like, I did some video work for the Blaseball team. Blaseball was a hell of a thing, but also the same studio making Mothership right now and blowing the TTRPGs community's minds. Recently had on Kickstarter a game called Werewolf in the Dark, which is basically which I played. I was lucky enough to play at the designer's house, and honestly, if you put a gun to my head and said, what is the most fun you have ever had playing a game in your life? I think it was that game of Werewolf in the Dark. It was...
Wow. High praise.
Yeah. It was like the fear of it's like midnight, it's pitch dark, you're hiding in someone's toilet. You've heard nothing in the house for easily 2 minutes. And then you hear from 2 rooms away someone go, oh my God, Alan's a werewolf! And then the sound of someone falling down an entire flight of stairs. And then everyone in the house bursts out laughing, revealing where you are. And the game is still going on. There's still a predator creeping. That was a huge non sequitur. Brian, I agree. That's what I could have just said, I agree.
Well, no, honestly, I have a similar thing where Tuesday Night Games also did, their first game was, I'm sure you know, Two Rooms and a Boom. And you rarely have a chance to play that game because you need a bunch of people. But every year for my birthday, we get a bunch of people. We go out to a big house and we play board games for a whole weekend. I like cook fried chicken. We do a whole thing.
Oh, great!
And but one of the things that my wife looks for in the whatever house we rent somewhere in the Poconos is, does this have a kitchen? And will this be good for Two Rooms and a Boom? Because we get to play it one time a year.
That's great. Have you got Don't Get Got?
No.
Great. There you go, Brian. You bring that. Give a little Google to Don't Get Got and bring that to your next Poconos House adventure. It's
coming up.
Oh, sweet. Okay, great. Yeah.
So, Quinns, this has been such a joy to chat with you. I feel like I could probably ask you 10 more questions, but I'm going to bring us to a close here and ask you the question that we ask all of our guests at the end, which is, what are you bringing to the table? And this is just our cute way of asking for a recommendation to our listeners. This could be a game, a show, a resource, a person. It could be something in tabletop, or it could be something you're just into and want to share with the listeners right now. Any kind of rec.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think Brian warned me about this, and I was like, oh, I'm going to pick the spicy, problematic book. So, yeah, I've been reading a biography recently that has been taking the top of my head off. It was recommended to me by a friend who... Okay, so it's called The Pike. It is the best biography I've read in a long time. It is hypnotizing and sort of drawing this conversation into a clean circle. It's a book on the history of a fascist. And you'd think, like, why on earth would I want to read a book about a fascist? And it's like, because this is a fascist that's pre-Mussolini, an Italian poet. And in terms of, like, me exploring stuff that I think is more worthy than it is necessarily back-scratching in the political community, it shows you how the inception of fascism, at a time when all TTRPGs have been like, this game isn't for fascists, or like, let's fight fascists in this game. It's like, okay. But what this biography covers and shows you in depth is how this person came out of like a poetic, romantic community. It's the biography that shows you how fascism can emerge from stuff that you as a leftist will recognize. It's just a stunning, disturbing book that shows you that fascists are not some like in alien breed that we can point out and be like, well, thank God we're not like them. It's like, no, this signal can grow in your house as well. And it's also just a very funny, fascinating book. And the kind of guy who teaches you that history is more mind-blowing than the most cracked out fantasy novel you could be reading. It's called The Pike. Can't recommend it enough.
Definitely will include that in the show notes. That sounds fascinating. Wait, I actually had a cute question I wanted to ask before we ended this conversation, if you'll indulge me.
Please.
I'm somebody who's never played a TTRPG. How do you sell me in one sentence?
Oh, wow. That's... have you played Mass Effect? Has this hypothetical person played Mass Effect?
Not necessarily. You don't know.
I don't know. Okay, I would say it's, you know, those really popular video games where you can flirt with people and sometimes kiss them and make them like you? A tabletop role-playing game is like that, but you can kiss anyone or anything. Any inanimate object, any person, your friend. You can get your end away in whatever way you want. And best of all, no one will know aside from your closest friends.
And if that ain't a pitch,
I don't know what is, baby.
That's been my pitch for a while. That's my one sentence.
That's really good.
You like Mass Effect 2? Imagine a game where you could bang anybody at all. Is how I sell RPGs. Thank you to both for coming on and listening to me talk for what felt like all 90% of this podcast. Goodness gracious, you're very patient.
No, such a joy.
Our job is to ask a question and get out of the way while the more interesting person talks. So we're doing our job.
Wow. I'm flattered and touched. Thank you very, very much for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to the table. You want to let people know where they can find you if they're looking for you on the internet?
If they're looking for me on the internet, they can find me if they go to YouTube and search Quinns Quest, while having spent a bit of time thinking how to spell the word Quinns. I think now it's popular enough that you can just have your own stab at whatever you think the spelling of that word is, and YouTube will point you in the right direction. Also, Quinns Quest is my TTRPGs channel. I make documentaries about games and play that I'm very proud of on the channel People, on the award-winning channel.
Hey.
Award-winning channel People Make Games.
Yeah.
Love that. We will put all of those notes in the show notes. Highly recommend you check out all of them. And if you want more gaming content from us, you can check out the 20-sided newsletter and the many-sided media Discord. Both of those will be linked in the show notes. These are both places where we talk more about this show, My First Dungeon, and just cool stuff happening in the TTRPG industry. Rate, review, and follow Talk of the Table wherever you get your podcasts. And that's what the table is talking about. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.